I'm going to start off with Washington State. This is one of the 2 new members to the WCC. This is a team coming off of an NCAA tournament berth. This is a team that is going to look a lot different from the team a year ago for many reasons. And they have a new head coach in David Riley. They only returned 2 players from the tournament team of a year ago. They lost basically all of their key scorers from last season. I believe the numbers, they only returned 4% of the minutes from last season. This is a brand new squad. This is a team that's going to be looking to build on what they were able to do a year ago, but with all new faces. And that is going to be one of their biggest challenges, to pick themselves up off the ground and continue to build off of what they had a year ago and what Kyle Smith was able to build at Washington State with the Cougars. This is a team that won 25 games last year. They were 14-6 in the Pac-12. They switch conferences. They lose their head coach. They lose basically their entire roster. And it's not like this is a team that is a perennial NCAA tournament participant. Last year was the first time they made it since 2006, 2007. And so you have to wind the clock back a long ways before you found a team that reached the tournament. And that is going to be the task ahead for David Riley and the squad, is how can you build it back to be in the conversation again? And we have seen some of this success going from the Big Sky to the WCC. So David Riley coming in, he was coming off back-to-back Big Sky championships at Eastern Washington. He was a 2-time Coach of the Year while he was there. He was at Eastern Washington for a long time and was an assistant with the Eagles, and was an assistant under Shante Leggins, who's now the head coach of Portland. And that's kind of the example you can point to, is at least for early success. Portland had early success that first year when you had a head coach from Eastern come over and bring a good chunk of the players he had while he was at Eastern. And that is very similar to what we see here with Washington State. Go over Cedric Coward being kind of like the leader of that group. For those who are unfamiliar with who this guy is, and obviously that's going to be a lot of people, not just WCC folks, but also Washington State folks, as they relearn a roster. 6'6" guard, senior. He was, as earlier mentioned, picked for the all WCC preseason team. 15 points a game, 6 rebounds, 89% from the free throw line. Really good catch and shoot player, great post up player. This is someone who is going to be one of the better players in the WCC this coming season. This is someone who I think has a good understanding of the situation he's walking into, and that they are trying to build something new at Washington State, but it's something he's familiar with because it was something he was building at Eastern Washington with Coach Riley. Ethan Price coming in, 6'10", forward, 12 points, 4 rebounds a game, 52% shooter from the field, 37% from 3. He was a Big Sky all-second team. Lawan Watts is another guy, 6'6" forward, redshirt sophomore, 9 points a game, nearly 5 rebounds a game in 22 minutes. Dane Erikstrup, the fourth of the Eastern Washington transfers coming over to Washington State, 6'11" forward, 10 points a game, 3 rebounds. So there's a lot of guys with established success at Eastern Washington that is coming over. And again, we've seen high elite Eastern Washington players come over and be very successful in the WCC. Even though we never actually got to see him play, I mean, you look up at Gonzaga, they have Steele Venters on that roster, and he was the Big Sky MVP for David Riley just a couple seasons ago. So there is, again, look at the track record of guys who are coming in. Look at Tyler Robertson, another example of that at Portland. number of guys who've made that transition over, and there's a lot of that transition that is going to take some time. It's going to take some program building, and this is something that David Riley and I had talked about a couple months ago during our interview, and I do want to play a little bit of that interview so that we can kind of, again, get a sense of where Washington State is and then what we might see from this squad moving forward. How have you seen this group start to gel, and how excited are you for this group in your first season there?
Yeah, so it is a different deal than it was 5-10 years ago. Now taking over a new job, we were returning 2 players from last year's top 25 season at Washington State. So the beauty of it though is that they're 2 players that were on a top 25 team. They know what winning looks like. They know what a championship basketball team looks like, and so having Parker and Isaiah has been a huge help for me and for our staff to be able to kind of instill those winning values. And then the other piece of it for me, I've been a head coach for 3 years. It's not totally new to me. Like when I got the head coaching job at Eastern Washington, we lost our 7 leading scorers. We were able to build through the transfer portal and have a decent season that first year. And then that's where, our kind of developmental culture and the continuity helped us. And then we were able to win the league the next 2 years. And so I think, we're in a great spot where we do have some returning guys from last year's team. It is a huge help to be able to bring my 4 Eastern guys over and just have some continuity. They know the terminology. They know what the schedule looks like. They know how practices are structured. And so, on paper, for sure, it looks like a total rebuild. But then when you actually get here in the gym, these guys are competing in week 2, like they've known each other for years. And so I think some of that familiarity has really helped. And then we're just able to adjust to the new times.
Having those 4 come over, like bringing over LeJean Watts, Ethan Price, Cedric Howard, Dane Erickstrop. During your intro press conference, you talked about family, trust, and commitment being kind of like the 3 pillars you wanted to build your program off of. How much have like those 4, knowing what you were able to do these past 2 years at Eastern Washington, has helped kind of like the early stages of what you're trying to do there with the Cougars?
Man, it's been great. Like, I think we do things a little different. We spend a lot of time together. I'm in the office a lot. Our coaching staff's in the office a lot. And so our returners, or our Eastern guys kind of understand, like, hey, we can just go hang out. Doesn't have to be like some, principal office talk every time I go to the office. It doesn't have to be a film session that's negative every time we go in there. It's like, there's real relationships here. They're kind of encouraging the other guys to come along. They're really developing that chemistry that we had at Eastern Washington, which is huge. Like that's the family piece is where it all starts. If you look at this like work, then it's not going to be an enjoyable process because we spend so much time together, and you're not able to get that extra, 2-3% that you need out of these days if you're really trying to get out of here and just punch a time card. So I think they've done a great job instilling that. And then, I think it's just the guys that we've brought in, the 2 guys that are returning, they've all bought into that as well. And they understand what we're trying to get out of this. They understand the values. And so it's been a really fun first couple of weeks of just everyone being on the same page and just fighting to build that chemistry, to build the family environment. And then that's how you build trust. You show that you're committed by doing that over and over. So I think, those values have been brought in a little quicker by having the Eastern boys. But at the end of the day, like it's just all about showing them who you are every single day. And I think that's been the fun part of the last couple of weeks.
So we got this here a little bit from Coach Riley. And again, like this is a team that's going to have some growing pains because they're building a new system. They're implementing a new system, and they're even amongst the non-Eastern Washington guys, there's some good talent here. Looking at Ndie Okafor, who's going to be a huge part of what I think they're going to try to do. 6'9", forward who came over from Cal. Didn't get a whole lot of playing time last year, but on tape, looks like this is someone who's going to be able to kind of contribute pretty quickly. Look at Nate Calmes, who came over from Washington, 6'2", junior guard. He had a season high 15 points against Arizona. You could just see like how he attacks the basket and how that's going to be something that's going to be valuable for this squad. Again, like this, you have a lot of pieces who are going to be kind of like your 2 through 4, maybe even your 5s. You don't really have that solidified point guard. So this is Calmes could be that guy who steps into that role pretty quickly. And then Marcus Wilson, who is one of the higher recruited guys coming in, 3-star recruit, good range, attacks the basket well. Again, another guy that is going to give them a different dynamic from some of the other pieces that they've been able to bring into this point. And for this squad, for this Washington State team, I think it is an unrealistic expectation to think that this is going to be a team that can get back to the NCAA tournament, because you lose so much of that continuity. You lose so much of that personality of the team you had a year ago, and you're trying to rebuild all of that in a different conference against new opponents, with a new head coach, with new players. And yes, even though today's college basketball is different because you can throw a team together overnight, essentially through the portal, this is still going to be an uphill battle, I think, for Washington State, at least early on, to kind of figure out what their personality is, how these pieces are going to all fit together. But the pieces do look like they are going to be complementary, that they do have kind of a cohesive, on paper grouping that's going to work. Looking at their schedule, there's at least like a kind of a rev up period where they start with Portland State, Bradley, Idaho, and yet Bradley's going to be a good squad. That's not just like a pushover game, but these are going to be opponents that Washington State should be able to handle. Then they will take on Iowa, that second full week of the season. They also do have a return opportunity with Eastern Washington, so that's going to be kind of a interesting, fun matchup that they will have with so much of the connection there in the Spokane area. The two big games, really the three big games that they have on that non-conference schedule, on December 2nd, they'll be at Nevada. On December 12th, they'll be taking on Boise for a neutral site. And then they will be at Washington on December 18th. And those three games really are going to be their best opportunity to kind of showcase what this team is and what their potential is going into this season. Boise State is really highly thought of going into this season. They are the preseason pick to win the Mountain West. Nevada is obviously one of those Mountain West teams who's going to be in the mix as well. Washington moving to the Big Ten is going. Honestly, that's going to be a challenge for that team. Again, also new head coach going into a new conference with, in that conference, very different personality than the teams that they saw in the Pac-12. Very different personality from what we were used to seeing a Washington team play. So these are going to be three big opportunities for Washington State to kind of see where they are, because if they can, thinking about that, they can get a couple of these games, I think they do actually kind of position themselves well before they jump into WCC play. And of course, like, you're looking at the four teams that kind of were picked ahead of them in the WCC rankings: Gonzaga, St. Mary's, Santa Clara, USF. They're going to get their first shot at one of them just after the new year. They'll be hosting San Francisco on January 4th. The big one I know that everyone's going to circle is they're going to be at Gonzaga on January 11th. So that's another big opportunity for them. Again, this is a top 10 Zags team. So this is, if you're a Washington State fan, think when you had to play Arizona, think when you had to play top tier UCLA, maybe not now UCLA, but top tier UCLA over the years. That's who you're going up against. Again, this Gonzaga squad, like, especially over the last few years, you talk about having to play Arizona. Tommy Lloyd was Mark Few's assistant for all those years. So there's going to be a lot of similarities when you look at the way Arizona operates and the way Gonzaga operates in the course of their games. They don't play St. Mary's until later in January 25th, and that will be a game in Pullman. So that's a really great opportunity for them. Again, like you're going to have to get used to. That's again different style. We're talking about Gonzaga being very similar, thinking about the way maybe Arizona would play. St. Mary's is going to play maybe a lot more like a Mick Cronin UCLA team. They're going to kind of drag you through the mud and make you play ugly in that game. And this is a team, David Riley team, that actually does want to pick up the pace. And they're also incredibly efficient. At least they were at Eastern Washington. They were third in the nation in effective field goal percent at 58.1. They were ninth in the nation in assist percentage. So this is a very effective, this is a team that's going to be able to kind of numbers you to death in a way. Like they're going to be highly effective in the way to do. They're not going to turn the ball over a ton. They're going to take good shots. They're going to find the right man. They're going to be disciplined. And I think that's going to be a huge factor in the WCC, because a lot of times these games get won on the margins, especially when you think about how you're going to beat Santa Clara, how you're going to beat USF, how you can beat St. Mary's, how you can beat Gonzaga. Like you have to do all the little things right. And there is at least proof over the course of time, the way David Riley has run his teams, that is going to be a positive. That is going to be something that they do well, or at least that is something that they predict out to be able to do well going into this season. So this Washington State squad, I do think that where they were picked for the WCC by the coaches is probably about right. There is potential that they could climb up those standings a little bit. Maybe they can. I think there's maybe a chance that they could slide into third, but I think like fourth is, in my opinion, probably their ceiling this first year as they continue to kind of figure out everything. But their floor to me is probably that sixth slot. I don't think they're going to slide that much further down, because once you get to kind of 6 and 7, like after that gets ugly at the bottom of the conference, San Diego, Pepperdine, Portland, Pacific, and I don't think there's a way that Washington State could end up that bad. But there is a chance that Oregon State maybe could climb up, and LMU could climb up and give Washington State some fits on that front. They will only have to play LMU once this first season, and they'll host them, and I think that's the first weekend of conference play. So I think Washington State overall, this is about where they're going to be. I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be one of the tougher challenges throughout the course of conference play, throughout WCC play. I think the squad has a chance to be an NIT team. Once again, like they were in the NIT, I think it was a few years ago. So I think that's where they have the opportunity to get back to. I think that you could see legitimately 5 WCC teams, maybe 6, get into either the NCAA tournament or the NIT. And Washington State is going to be one that I think I could solidly see in the NIT field. And if somehow everything goes their way, they might be able to slide into an at-large spot for the NCAA tournament. But I think that's a long shot. I think they're more likely to see NIT, lower seed of that tournament. Maybe they get the host again. Like the NIT, the way they seed everything else is usually also by like TV and the venue and ticketing and all that sort of thing. So we'll see. I do think that Washington State has the potential to get back to one of those 2 tournaments. I think most likely it's going to be lower end of the NIT. But that is going to also be a case of, can they finish 5th or better in the WCC to make that